All right, Caroline, you're the first box. Anything for management?
Oh, the only thing I can think is if we could do a tutorial on review screens, because I think I mean, there's the documentation, but also take some sample interview and just do a review screen thing with dependencies. I think that would really help people a lot.
Maybe we're at the stage where we should identify like the 3 areas where people most have questions about, when starting, working through their entire, their first time through a really full featured interview.
Yeah.
And we can maybe then devote some time to that, because it does seem like the court stuff and review screens, I know have now come up twice in recent memory.
Exactly. And with pretty advanced people too. I mean, not people are really thinking through and looking at the documentation, not just somebody who just expects to be held by the hand.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by what Emily's been able to do with very little guidance.
Yeah, yeah.
And no previous self-expressed experience doing this sort of stuff. So
right, yeah.
Really, it's just that willingness to dive in. All right, so that's something to think about. Of course, Quentin, if you're watching this video, you're the one who's been writing all of our wonderful documentation. Well, Bryce has been doing. Everyone's been doing something.
Well, it'd be cool if you had some. What are you saying, Bryce? Sorry.
I was going to say Quinn's definitely done a lot more of the documentation than I have.
Yeah, he's really become the documentation all-star.
But I think the other thing is that if you had, because that documentation is fantastic, because I've been I've been trying to do all this stuff from forever, although I take gaps. But if you think about assembly line wanting to be, we want to be the product that states use, right? When they start to do this, is to have Atlantis, the state of Atlantis, starting from scratch. How do you do this? And we know.
I'm pretty sure Atlantis is already very advanced with their court system.
Well, some other state, the state of Hades. And I don't mean HITI. Anyway, something like, but you know what I mean? Take some sort of fantasy state, and we know what the problems are, and then just lead the fantasy developer through the assembly line to make their fantasy state.
Yeah.
Assembly line.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of
cool. A consistent theme through line of through all the stuff is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. I am amazed though at what is there, that the documentation has gone leaps and bounds over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like the boot camp stuff that we did.
Yeah. Yeah, we just need to revisit it every once in a while, and maybe it's time to think about that some more.
But I think those two things are key that we are hearing from people, is the courts issue and the review screen.
I was going to say relevant to this, but I don't remember if we've decided on something like this before. But do we want most of the documentation to be like essentially kind of you brought this up in the context of a video, like we should do a video? Should it be? But I do think most of our efforts recently have been writing things down and trying to just document, since that text is generally the easiest to update if something goes out of date.
Yeah.
Also the easiest to add, and quick. And I'd say then followed by super quick recorded session with maybe just one person, followed by a Teaching Tuesday style thing, where we have an entire group and here's anyone have questions on this or something like that. And so I just wanted to clarify that, where do we think we should focus most of our efforts on documentation? Is it should we do something still feels too complicated for text, as most of DocAssembly things are? Yeah.
I don't know. My general inclination is to get the text documentation as good as possible,
Yeah,
because
I
that's
agree.
the most longest. That'll be the fact that it can be easily updated means that it's the longest lasting,
Mhm.
and can sort of be the sort of like authoritative source. I think it might be interesting to think about what we could do about like making some, I don't know what you call them, like certain trails through the documentation, like a guided trail through the documentation, which is like the Atlantis thing, which
Mhm.
then is just someone after the documentation's in place is like, hi, now I'm just a video that's going to walk you through this happy path or whatever it is they're called. And then that gives some of the people the context of seeing things on the screen or whatnot, but maybe would lower the need to make it feel like I'm going to do we're going to do a big presentation on like how
Yeah.
to do this or explain this. And that way
Mhm.
it can just lean on the text, and could even maybe mean not involving the people who wrote the text stuff, and not putting more stuff on their plate. So I can see a world in which Quentin puts all that documentation together, and I, as the very casual DocAssemble user, goes through the happy path and it's like, okay, we're gonna go through this, or if maybe we want it a little more polished, we have one of the normal users go through. Or even we could make it if the documentation is really, regardless actually of what the documentation is, this could be a good exercise for some of the students, especially since we'll have a little more time with them
Yeah.
next year, which is like, here's a happy path that says, do X, Y, and Z. I'd like you to document your going through this to help make the next person's traveling through easier. And then that would allow them, especially for folks who are new, it would allow them an opportunity to engage with it so that they could learn it. And maybe they don't do it on the first pass, the video, but that might get them that might be a good way to teach them how to do it as well. Yeah, Michelle.
So it used to be that the happy path was a Trello checklist, which I
Yep.
still think is a very useful tool.
Mhm.
So one, I wanted to,
Remind.
kind of
Yeah.
remind us about that. And maybe not a Trello checklist,
Yeah.
but if we could make
I think
an interview that was a checklist, or
I like the idea of a checklist. I feel like, and I conceptually love the idea of the Trello checklist, but I think reality has shown us that is not the way. The compliance, the overall group compliance among multiple different people coming in for different amounts of time and doing things in different ways.
it just might not be Trello might not be the way to go.
Yeah,
because
that's what I'm saying.
But a checklist, and we can think about
I-
what that might look like.
I
Yeah.
agree. I like the idea of a
Okay.
checklist. And so that could be something in the documentation, which are, here are our 3 happy paths.
Yeah.
And the 3 happy paths.
That kind of is in, I mean, they're not,
Bum,
it's not formally a checklist, but the documentation is very much a checklist in many ways already,
Parts of it, yeah.
in terms of steps.
Parts of
Yeah.
it. There could be
Yeah.
an overall checklist that has reference to
Yeah.
other places. I just know that I personally can't keep track of my list items if I don't check them off, if I don't have a
Yeah.
way to cross them out
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
And
could
I
add
do
that at
think
the
I do
end
think
of the
we have
documentation.
we have reached a level of complexity that I think it is probably not realistic to assume that there is a master checklist. I think that what there is, there are
Sure.
sets of happy paths that we can define.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch
Sure.
of edge cases that don't make it into those happy paths. But as long as the documentation touches upon them,
Mhm.
that that people can find it when needed. So I think like
Sure.
we don't want to boil the ocean. That's always our balancing point, right? Is figuring out how
Boil
much.
the ocean.
Don't know what
I
that
do
means
feel
in
like
this context, but-
I'm amazed for like the group of folk, the size of the group that we are and the resources that we have. I'm actually really amazed at how well all of this stuff has gelled together.
Sure.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I do think we have lessons in there from like the things that we thought were good ideas that just didn't get uptake because either they were too hard to maintain or too hard for people to jump into. I think we just need to learn those lessons and not try to think this is the time that
This is the
this is the
answer.
tool that's going to let us do the checklist right. So, maybe if we retreat from having to have a mass, everything checklist, to think about like, here are the, and then, maybe the everything checklist is effectively the checklist of checklists, but even then there will be edge cases that fall off those. But you have like the documentation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bryce.
I was gonna say like the getting on GitHub checklist, or like the less checklist and more of like coding your interview loop, because I feel like some of it starts to fall apart at some point where it's like, here are a bunch of things you should do, but they don't necessarily need to be in this order, and you'll likely have to go and revisit earlier things that you checked off once you edit later things. But like, here's like your coding your interview loop. Here's your checklist for QA. Here's like production checklist and stuff. I really like the idea of the shorter, like, here's the one thing you do.
Checklist, and you pick the ones that you want.
Yeah. And then there's the high 5 things you do.
And I'm going to bring up Trello just again, real quick, not as the tool we use, but as the place where we already have a lot of checklist information. So let's not start from scratch.
No,
let's see what we've got.
This was this is where we landed in the last conversation, to the extent that we had this conversation, was that we should use those as a base to draw stuff out. So
that's right. I missed last week, but it
wasn't last week. This is the last time we had this conversation, which was a while ago.
Oh, I see. So I use those Trello checklists now. I mean, I update them to be more relevant to what the documentation is, but I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, no, I thought there was a lot good, but when you unbundle them, they are effectively like a collection of, here's QC, here's
absolutely,
and so that, I think that's really powerful. I think our mistake was trying to put them all in one place, and then trying to get everyone to access it, and it just turned out to not be manageable. That's fine. We learn these lessons.
My other question is, at some point, can I hear what's happening next year with the students? Because we
can have a conversation after this. This.
Yeah, whenever we get to it.
Not really a management thing, but we can have a discussion after this, between this deep dive. All right, so that was first block. Caroline, anything else?
That's me.
All right. Well, for starting early, we're still doing okay, I guess. Bryce.
Nothing off the top of my head, I think.
All right. Anything we need to think about ahead of your and Quentin's Nevada trip, or in relationship to the launch possibly happening this week?
For launch, I don't think there's much like admin stuff to talk about. I think we've talked about previously, or at least already, like what it looks like. And I'm going to try and poke Matt a lot more. Don't think it's going to be today. Would like it to be tomorrow. Worst case, maybe Wednesday, and I don't think I would want to do it after that.
Yeah, I was going to say, figure out a time after which you're like, well, there's not enough lead up.
Yeah, if by the end of Tuesday we're like ready to go, then I can be like, hey, can we launch like early Wednesday? And if for some reason that doesn't happen, then it gets pushed back 2 weeks. So
it would be nice if it was live when you guys were talking about it, though. So if you can needle Matt a couple times, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Michelle.
I don't think I've got anything. I'm having my own woes with NPM publishing, but that's my own battle to fight.
All right.
I was going to say, just remember the previous question of stuff we should be doing at eCourts is, I don't know if that's a question I should ask here, or what the question even should be of just.
Oh, that could be
a first in-person conference. I don't know how to do things. Is there stuff that, as a group, to like network with people?
I think we should probably have we can devote some time in our lab meeting to that tomorrow. Okay. Because Quentin will be there too, and I think he's going to be there. That's probably, makes sense.
Quentin will be much better at this stuff than I will. So.
But I did see how one thing I noticed is you interacting with the Open Gov folks on Mastodon, and I think that's probably a really good networking thing for you. Okay.
Oh, weren't we going to discuss the government guidance on
yeah, I thought about that and I almost brought it up, but I was like,
oh yeah, let's give it.
Did not look through it yet, and so
since Quentin's not here, why don't we say everyone's got a reprieve for another, I guess, 2 weeks, because that's wait till we're all can chime in, and that gives us a little more time to look at that tab that's just been sitting open in your browser, which is exactly what is going on with mine. Open tab here. If you want to throw that in the Teams again, though, to give give folks a link, Bryce, that would be helpful. All right. Okay. And in that case, I don't really have anything, and I guess that is management-y. Bryce, if you want to stop the stream.